You quite literally cannot afford to miss buying Flux right now. And in today's video, I'm going to explain why. And obviously you've read the title. I strongly believe something big is brewing. And obviously Flux is in a great position to take advantage of what will happen very, very soon. So I want to tell you all of this and more in today's video. But first, guys, why is Flux going to make millionaires? Well, I'm going to let you know why it'll make millions and millionaires in the upcoming bull market, but also, should we actually buy the project right now? Okay. And to answer that question, we have to kind of take a quick look at the current state of the charts. Okay. So its all-time low was actually back in about 2020, right? Not at inception, back in about 2020. Okay. At about 1.7 cents. Now, if we fast forward to today's price at 45 cents, we're actually at 26x up. And I've marked that red, a big red X, because that's obviously not ideal. We want to try to get as cheap as possible, but we'll touch on this more in just a second. All-time high was $4.20. Please, no one laugh at that. But it's actually a yellow tick in this case because we're only actually a 9x down. So it's not too bad. A lot of the larger projects are about this much down. So what is that trying to tell me? Well, that instantly kind of says, hey, there's a lot of demand for Flux right now. That's why it hasn't dropped too much. And again, guys, this isn't a large cap project. This is like a mid cap project. So the fact that it hasn't dropped that far from its all-time high starts to lead me to think a little bit more. Obviously, we can't draw conclusions thus far, but again, let me explain a bit more. So what we really have to do is ignore the rest of this sort of stuff and figure out, is it a good time to buy based on this, okay? If we zoom into this, this is kind of like the last, 12 or so months of trading action, which happens to be, coincidentally, pretty much when the bear market started, okay? So this is zoomed in right now. This is what we're looking at. And this is so integral to finding if it's a good time to buy a dollar cost average, because what we essentially have to do here is find like pretty much the common trading ranges, right? So sort of the very, very top and the bottom on average, okay? And the very top right here is about 85 cents. And the bottom, where it seems to be hitting quite a few times, is just about 40 cents, okay? So we're actually trading right now at 45 cents, guys, which tells me it is a very, very, very good time to begin DCAing. Actually, I'm going to go as far as to say anything 60 cents and under is a good time to DCA. So yes, we actually are. Now, obviously, this is why it can get very misconstrued when you start looking at the overall picture. Sometimes, guys, what's happened in the past has been and gone. We have to look at the last 12 months or bear market. And if we actually are at a very competitive time in terms of buying opportunities in the last, 12 months since the bear market started, well, then that tells me it is a good time at DCA, okay? A lot of these projects are getting more and more mature as the years go by. And what I strongly believe is there's going to be huge demand coming up in 2025, right? So this is us right now. And the rest is kind of me just speculating here, but I strongly do believe my price prediction at a minimum for Flux is $9.75 in 2025/2026, meaning at a minimum, we're going to 22x from this price. How good is that? I guarantee you those people who haven't actually seen more than 1 or 2 multiples before will be blown away by 5x, let alone a 10x or a 20x, okay? So this is some crazy stuff and is actually a really good indication, hey, actually it is a very good time to start DCAing. Of course, none of this is financial advice, so I hear it, right? You might be thinking to yourself, what makes Flux so good? Well, this is kind of the meat and potatoes part of it, and this is why I'm really, really excited about what this project's doing and why it has made it into many, many, many of my portfolio videos, why I tell people that they should look at it for an actual hold, okay? So what is it? It's a decentralized cloud, right? So Flux is like any traditional so-called cloud, except it's decentralized, right? So it's a huge unlock for not just Web3, but also Web2 as well. It's competing with like Amazon Web Service. It's competing with Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, that sort of thing, okay? But it's completely decentralized, and we'll touch on some of the possibilities right now. So as I say, endless possibilities. You can do things like store photos and videos, such as a traditional cloud. You can actually run nodes on it as well, which is super interesting. Host websites via WordPress. This is somewhat new and actually awesome, okay? Create dApps using Docker. So Docker is a feature or a software that pretty much allows you to compile code and redeploy code anywhere pretty much. And so these guys leverage Docker very intimately, so anyone can pretty much create code and actually host their own decentralized application right on top of Flux, from its decentralized cloud itself, which is awesome, right? Render computationally heavy videos, photos, whatever it might be, okay? You can sort of do the things that the render, that natural network render, RNDR can, okay, as well, and run games that leverage distributed computing power. So again, you can imagine Flux, as we're going to go into in just a second, as just pretty much like a digital computer that has a whole heap of, CPU, a whole heap of RAM, a whole heap of storage, and you can just pull away and leverage that stuff, okay? And the real big kicker here is that Flux is actually cheaper than its Web 2 competitors. Yes, legitimately is cheaper and better to use. So it's actually a win-win all around. So let's touch on the tech here. Now, Flux is something we can get into all day, every day, right? There's a lot to talk about here. It's a decentralized cloud, but when I talk about the tech, I'm going to talk about the foundations and kind of, have a few more slides after this just to kind of visualize it for you guys. I think you'll really enjoy it. So there's two types of essentially nodes on the network. We'll talk about the main type of node first, like the miners. And there's 12,500 actually on the network. Yes, that's not just some make-believe fake, voodoo number. That's actually real on the network right now. And it's made up of three different types of nodes. The first, 8,500 of what's called Cumulus. There's 2,100 Nimbus and 1,800 Stratus, right? So a total cumulative specs of 97,300 bloody cores, 264 terabytes of RAM, and 1 petabyte of SSD. So the reason, we'll get into the sort of the tiers in just a second, but the reason there's more Cumulus is because it's easier to create Cumulus node. It requires less money and hardware and things like that, okay? But this is insane, okay? So there's a lot that people can leverage here, okay? It's only going to get more and more and more with some of the big partnerships that these guys have. And the miners as well. So these guys are essentially at the base of Flux, right? And they operate on a modified fork of Zcash, which obviously is a fork of Bitcoin, with actually a new consensus created by Flux called Proof of Useful Work. Now, it's funny because Proof of Useful Work, or POUW, was actually coined by Flux and the founder, but ICP went and actually stole it and then, said it was their whole thing. So there's a bit of a controversy there, but Flux actually coined it first, all right? So there's also a new mining algorithm called Flux Hash, which I actually really like, which actually means it's ASIC resistant, meaning that powerful miners aren't required to mine, which is further actually decentralizing the network. So with Bitcoin, for example, what happens is with Bitcoin, there's like 2 or 3 massive mining companies that own over like 60% of the total hash rate. And that's because it's very expensive to run miners on Bitcoin. And the harder it is to mine Bitcoin, right? The higher the hash rate goes because more miners are joining, which ultimately they can because it's going to get more and more monopolized. The less incentive small miners have to actually try to mine a block, for example, it becomes almost impossible, just a chance of putting a luck almost. And so what happens there, right? The hash rate keeps going up. The machines that required to actually mine the blocks get more and more expensive, and then therefore it gets more centralized. Well, with Flux, they've capped it and it's reduced, okay? So you only need GPUs, and therefore anyone can pretty much become a miner at this stage, right? And also the halving is every 2 years, unlike Bitcoin's every 4 years, which is obviously pretty good, therefore, it creates more scarcity, right? So this is kind of like the tech broken down so you guys can understand it. Now, don't worry about this top part just yet. We'll touch on the topology for a second here. So we have the Flux blockchain down here, right? And what actually happens is these are all the miners on the network, and these are all the different types of nodes. Again, you have Cumulus, Nimbus, and Stratus, the different tiers. We'll touch on the pricings over here in a second. And what happens is when the miners actually mine a block, okay, it's not just given all 100% to the miners. It's broken up. So 50% will go to the miner that mines the block, right? And right now the block reward is 37.5 Flux. And the other 50% will be broken up into these tiers here, right? So Stratus gets the most because Stratus requires 40,000 Flux to bond to the network to actually become a Stratus node. Plus you have to have all these hardware requirements, right? So therefore they're given the most amount. That's why there's the least amount of these guys on the network. Nimbus is 12.5% and Cumulus is 7.5%. There's so much of these guys because it doesn't really require that much to start up with, okay? And so what happens is it's broken up and both in between these guys here. So it's very fair, and actually it's really, really fair for the nodes themselves because unlike the miners where pretty much the best man wins, right? Well, the nodes, these fellas right here, what happens is they enter into a queue system. So you're just waiting, right? So it's just like no matter what happens, you just airdrop the tokens. So you're just waiting. Oh, it's my turn. Even if, in the case of the Cumulus tier, there's like what, 8,000. So you have to wait 8,000 spots. But once you get there again, you get that guaranteed, right? So it's just a nice, fair system, which I really, really like. The really cool thing is as well, for all the extra hash rate that these miners spin up and use to create the block, the ones that don't win that block reward, they get the reward over here. That computation can now be repurposed to do things like render. So it's like a little microbiome ecosystem where nothing's really wasted. It's really, really cool, right? So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So we have the Cumulus over here, 1,000 Flux. We have the Nimbus over here at 12,500 Flux, and then 40,000 over here for the Nimbus, Stratus rather. It's very, very profitable for those people who actually do look at the Stratus nodes, at least from what I've heard, right? And before we glide past the tech, I want to just mention something really, really cool about their kind of reward system. So as I said, if you're a miner on the network and you get half the block reward, 50% of that 37.5, let's just say it's 12, right? Well, you get the 12 Flux, but they have a really cool mechanism where they have parallel asset chains, okay? So they have these chains that are very intimately connected with Flux that incentivizes people to use their ecosystem. So let me explain, right? So you're a miner or you're a cumulus node and you get your portion of the block reward, okay? It's just easier for me to say miner because it's like 50%, okay? Let's just say it's 12 tokens, Flux, right? Well, what happens is you actually have those 12 tokens as well added to these, what are called parallel asset chains. So essentially, you'll then essentially double your reward. So you'll have a portion of that divided up to how many parallel asset chains there are. Right now there's 9, but they're gonna have a maximum of 10. So let's just make it nice and easy and say 10. So you'll have your 12 Flux, again, divided equally up into these, 10 parallel asset chains. So you might have 0.12, 0.12, 0.12 in each of these networks that gets you an extra 12 Flux. The only caveat is that they're wrapped Flux on each of these. So you'll have, 0.12 wrapped 𝗡cie𝗿𝗩𝗡 or wrapped Flux on 𝗡cie𝗿𝗓, right? 0.12 wrapped Flux on Ethereum, so on and so forth. So the reason they did this was because it's getting double the rewards, but also it's incentivizing people on Flux to go and use other ecosystems as well, okay? So that's kind of the philosophy. They have the 𝗡cie𝗿𝗱𝗩𝗣𝗡 wallet, which is like the core wallet of Flux, which is very powerful, might I say. And so you can pretty much, there's a token bridge on there. You can obviously bridge your assets to and from the 𝗡cie𝗿𝗱𝗩𝗡 wallet. So, if you want to get the rewards from these networks and you want to actually put it back in native Flux, not wrapped Flux, you can do that over the wallet, okay? So it's very interesting, pretty cool. In my opinion, just being critical here, I would have just liked double the amount of Flux on the Flux network, but I can see what they're trying to do here. And again, right now, there's only 9 parallel asset chains. That's why I've got plus 0.9 here, okay? So, but as I said, there's one more to come out. So once that extra one comes out, I'm not too sure what it'll be yet. So you're pretty much getting extra rewards on these sort of chains, which is pretty interesting, right? So let's now move on to the impact Flux actually has on Web 2 and Web 3 as well. So Web 3, we'll start with us. So Flux further decentralizes networks as nodes can be run on a decentralized cloud. Now, this is pretty important, guys. This is like decentralizing the very thing that makes something decentralized. Now, did you know over 25% of the nodes on Ethereum are actually hosted on Amazon's web service? 25%, guys. Remember, it's POS now, proof of stake, which means you only need 33% to kind of collude in this case and take over the network, or at least double spend, right? So yeah, this is pretty integral. So you're essentially decentralizing the nodes, because right now a lot of the nodes are hosted because a lot of people don't have machines, fast machines. So what do? They pay Amazon, they pay Google, they pay Microsoft to run a node on their server that gets them their rewards, right? It's again, it's a digital cloud, right? It's just a digital computer. So this is kind of dangerous because it centralizes power. And obviously if crypto comes down with a massive regulation hammer, all those centralized networks like as Amazon and Microsoft, they're going to follow regulations and probably cut a lot of people off from the crypto world. So this is important. We're decentralizing the decentralization aspect, okay? Now, Web 2, what can this disrupt? Well, people can use Flux as an alternative to the Google Cloud for uploading and storing videos, photos, so on and so forth. It's just, a cloud at the end of the day, right? But again, at much cheaper prices. So what this means is no censorship, no single point of failure, no sanctions, etc. If you have a hurricane come through or whatever it is, tornado, right? And that kind of destroys a whole bunch of servers. Well, you can still run a node because, again, it's a decentralized global cloud. I just love it. It's awesome. It's a fantastic idea. Now, this is something that this page here that people aren't talking about that I just think Flux is going to really help. And is actually the reason why I think there's going to be massive demand for Flux in the near future, okay? And that's regulation. Hear me out. So this is very important to know. As crypto becomes regulated, so too will the infrastructure that nodes need to operate. Again, those servers, right? Those centralized servers. So Flux could support many Web3 projects during a possible transition and harsh crackdown. Okay, so remember with China, how they banned mining. Imagine China was the US banning crypto, okay? And obviously you're going to have Amazon and stuff wanting to comply with US regulations, so they're going to ban crypto as well and say, all you nodes running on Ethereum or running on Algorand, well, we're cutting you off. That's where Flux is going to say, hey, come join us, come launch on us, So that it can really take advantage of that massive pivot if it ever happens. And also its security status, right? This is pretty interesting. Now, I'm not going to hold them to this. It's just kind of, look, Gary's on a wild goose chase right now, so we can't really say this is for certain, but essentially Flux has been reviewed by 2 legal expert firms who claim it's not a security in both the US or EU. So yeah, again, it's kind of like, I'm not going to hold my breath for that, but it's definitely a good sign. Okay. Now it's partners. This is huge. Flux really shines with these partners, guys. So NVIDIA, right? Flux was actually accepted in NVIDIA's Inception program, gaining accelerated growth with NVIDIA's tech, expert access, networking, and co-marketing. I wouldn't typically announce a big partner like this, but NVIDIA is massive, as we should all know. They're at the cutting edge of pretty much anything GPUs are, obviously. But the thing is, right, I wouldn't typically announce something that's in an Inception program or in some sort of program that's accelerated growth programs. But this is important because this is right up Flux's alley. You know, if Flux can get some good nodes, like hardware nodes launching on their network, which a lot of these nodes can be purchased like for a couple $100 and physically set up, this is massive, guys. There's a lot more to unlock here, especially in this decentralized computing space, and NVIDIA is the leader in this, right? Now, 𝗡cie𝗿𝗩𝗡. 𝗡cie𝗿𝗩𝗡 is a leader in the cloud services in the European region, also in Canada as well. And the partnership allows Flux to open to the Web 2 enterprise world, okay? And last, we have Lumen. So these guys are I don't know if you guys know about this, but you know, Lumen is a massive Web 2 company. They have 30,000 employees. Just in the month of March, they made $3.7 billion in revenue, and they're helping Flux establish what's called the Titan node for small to medium enterprises to pull Flux together and create a new node, right? A Titan node, essentially a node even higher than the Cumulus tier, the top tier, right? Super powerful node. That's going to be, or Stratus node, should I say? I'm kind of getting confused. That's like a step above all the other ones that are essentially going to have like, you know, probably 100,000 Flux or some crazy number of Flux they have to bond, but it's going to provide a lot of enterprise clients with that sort of extra boost they need to kind of you know, want to actually leverage Flux, because let's face it, right? Flux is super powerful, 97,000 cores, so on and so forth. But to kind of go where they want to go, they're going to have to really supersize themselves. So this is a good step in the right direction, all right? So lots of good stuff happening for Flux, guys. I'm super bullish on this project. It's different to Render, okay? Render is specifically GPU-based, rendering things. You know, Flux can do that, but Flux is more so a global thing, right? It's the infrastructure cloud, right? Decentralized infrastructure cloud. So I'm super interested in where this project's going, and that's why I always talk about it in my videos, right? So I made a couple really good deep dives into Flux 5 or 6 months ago now. You can watch the fundamental tokenomic breakdown over here. It's about a 40-minute video, but I go really in depth with this. Also raise some good concerns, and also my technical breakdown over here where I kind of touch on how things work on a little bit more granular level than what I could do in this video here today. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the video right to the very end. I appreciate you for doing that. And if you have, just hit the like button and also subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Okay, take good care. Talk to you soon. Bye.